the atmosphere, and the crowd that never tame. Mets post-game show brings the flame.
What is up, New York Mets fans? Welcome back to the Mets post-game show here on this lovely Saturday night. Unfortunately, we do have to talk about a Mets loss. It's a very frustrating Mets loss. We will break down the X's and the O's here on March 29th, 2025. Rob cannot join me on this post-game stream, so I am riding solo in this one. But as always, please do smash those thumbs up buttons. Subscribe to both of our channels if you want more Mets post-game instant reactions, as we will be breaking down most, if not all, of the New York Mets games in this season for the rest of the way. And as always, drop those comments in the live chat. This was an extremely frustrating game. Watching this through, watching the offense, watching them not come through for a spectacular outing from Griffin Canning, one that might have been one batter too long, and we'll get into that decision by Carlos Mendoza here in just a second. But I want to shout out the chat. And I know that this is an extremely tough loss, not how we wanted to kind of go about our Saturdays. You know, we had a extremely frustrating game one loss, followed up by a nice win yesterday with some early offense, winning that ball game, and the Mets can't come through tonight. It's just something has to click, and something will click with this offense, as it's only the first series of the season, of course. But this was such a winnable series. This was such a sweepable series, and a couple of at bats that, you know, are a little bit more situational, and we're potentially talking about a sweep. And this is why baseball is known as the game of inches, right? Because this is how it turns out. So I want to salute everybody in the chat here. Brad, appreciate you coming through. Explosive, Stanley, Darren, Cope, Steve, everybody, Daniel, he's nice, Carlos, Ken, Aaron, I appreciate you all being here again. Smash those thumbs up buttons. This is the post-game show that you want to be a part of, and you don't want to miss. And again, we are missing Rob here, as he is in Houston going to all 3 games with the 7-line army. So salute to him, making that trip all the way out there, supporting the guys in orange and blue in person. I know that wasn't the best series to go to, and now we know because of the outcome. But let's talk about it, right? Let's talk about Griffin Canning, and let's bring up the actual box score of it all. This is not going to be a lengthy post game by any means. I'm pretty sure you all know exactly what I'm going to say in this post game stream, and we're going to talk the majority about the offense. But we have to tip our caps to the New York Mets pitching. Griffin Canning, with an absolutely awesome way to start off his Mets tenure in the regular season, following up a very strong spring training, which earned him a spot in this rotation. He goes 5 1/3 innings pitched, 87 pitches before Carlos Mendoza pulls the plug on his outing. After that, Yordan Alvarez go-ahead RBI double off of that right center field wall. 2 earned runs given up. The other earned run was the solo home run by Jeremy Pena, which just barely squeaked out of that ballpark in the short porch to left. 2 walks and 4 strikeouts is the line for Griffin Canning. And you know what? This extends actually even beyond Griffin Canning, as Jose Butto and Max Kranick. Great to see Max Kranick in the ball game. I was wondering when we were going to see him. I thought it might have been in game 2, but Mendoza puts him in a little bit of a tough spot. This is his first major league action, regular season action, I should say, in what they say, about 3 years, something like that, if I'm not mistaken. So really good to see Max Kranick on the mound, getting out of a very tough situation. It was bases loaded in the 8th inning with only 1 down. Jose Butto gave it his all over 1 2/3 innings pitched. And again, Jose Butto was phenomenal. Way to come in and really just pick up where Griffin Canning left off. And that's something that we were able to say about this entire series, maybe outside of Clay Holmes' start. That was a little bit lackluster with those 5 free bases that we talked about in the initial post-game show. The rest of the pitching did their jobs. Tyler McGill, Huascar Brazaban, Danny Young, AJ Minter, right? Everybody. Edwin Diaz coming in for the save yesterday. The guys today, Jose Butto, Max Kranick. If I missed anybody, Ryan Stanek posting a scoreless inning yesterday. The pitching in this series, for the most part, right, did their jobs. They put the Mets offense in a position to sweep this series. The Houston Astros were not better than the New York Mets by and large, right? They're a great team. I really do think the Mets beat themselves. This is such a winnable series, and this is why it's so frustrating to talk about. But again, it's the opening series. We would have enjoyed to watch a series win, but the offense is going to come around. And the offense is basically what we need to talk about in this game because it was absolutely lifeless yet again. It was giving me a flashback of game one on opening day on March 27th, just a couple days ago. And now I was going to say that the Mets offense was scoreless for the last, I guess, 15 innings, but that's not true. I know that's what the YouTube title says. But listen, this is something where I don't know. I think it's situational hitting, to be honest with you. The situational hitting at times in this game did not come through. And if you watch this game, the sole run for the New York Mets was manufactured thanks to Jose Siri in that sixth inning. You know, he drew the walk. He stole second base with ease after almost getting picked off because, Aaron Getty was on him. He knew that he was taking that base, and he made a great pickoff attempt that just fell short, and Jose Siri swipes the bag on the very next pitch. But that play was so gutsy by Jose Siri, and he actually gives Juan Soto the, I guess, undeserving RBI as he grounds it back to the pitcher. He looks Jose Siri back, which is the right play, but then he just lollipops the throw over to first base, and Jose Siri takes advantage. And at that point, it was a 1-0 ball game. With the way that the Mets offense was rolling, Jose Siri had to make a play happen. He knew he had to make a play happen because stranding him with another batter coming up, although it was Pete Alonso with 2 outs, was just simply not going to be good news. So he decided to take matters into his own hands. And this is where I enjoy these kind of new look Mets, right? You're talking about Luis Angel Acuna coming in the ball game, providing some speed with a stolen base. You're talking about Jose Siri manufacturing a run basically by himself. This is what's going to pay the Mets dividends, especially as we go through this entire season and we kind of look at this year back in review when it's all said and done. The addition of some of these speedy guys to the roster is going to pay immense dividends. I know it didn't in this series by and large, only taking 1 of 3 games, but that's something that I see greatly benefiting this roster. And that's something that I wanted to see out of the New York Mets in terms of their roster construction over the past couple of seasons when they simply didn't have that luxury over the last couple of seasons. So that's at least the good news. Let me go ahead and get back into the comments here as we keep on addressing. This is like, if you want to know my exact thoughts and opinions and my feelings right now about this series, this is it from Stevie. Bleh. It's like, that was, that series was on a silver platter, ladies and gentlemen. That series was on a silver platter. But again, you talk about the lack of situational hitting. And let's just go back into this box score real quick because, again, Griffin Canning. And the one thing that I did want to touch on with Griffin Canning is something that I mentioned in one of my videos back in spring training when he actually pitched a gem against this very same Houston Astros team in spring training. And that's something that I noticed is that he is using his slider. And the Fox broadcasting booth actually put this graphic up in terms of the pitch distribution in 2024 for Griffin Canning versus, what he was using tonight. In seasons past, Griffin Canning has relied on, as you see, his outing and his line, he's relied on his four-seam fastball. This guy throws 92, 93 tops. He's not going to blow his fastball by anybody, so he has to get creative, right? The catchers know this. This organization knows this. Jeremy Hefner knows this. He has to get creative. And clearly, David Stearns and the New York Mets saw something in Griffin Canning after he was, essentially DFA'd by the Atlanta Braves in the trade that sent him to Atlanta in exchange for Jorge Soler. The off speed with Griffin Canning is pretty phenomenal. It's pretty phenomenal. The movement to it, the shape of it, it's awesome. And you saw that, him throwing more of a steady diet of changeups and sliders in spring training. And he actually threw his slider from the last graphic that they showed. I believe, around 57% of the time tonight. So he was, I guess, setting up hitters early in the count with the fastball, but he was relying on that slider. It has a nice tight break to it. He got Yordan Alvarez swinging at one point in his second at bat. He got a lot of swing and miss. And that's something that the Mets can definitely build off of when you're talking about this rotation and the longevity of it. And maybe the Mets go to a 6-man rotation, or maybe they don't when they get fully healthy, when Montas comes back, when Manaea comes back. If Griffin Canning is pitching this way, I think that would be a formidable top 6 if you're putting Griffin Canning in that 6th spot. And let's not pretend like he didn't earn it in spring training. I was basically the biggest non-believer of Griffin Canning making this rotation. I thought that his role was going to be a long man out of the bullpen, but he proved that he can be a starter in spring training, and he got the job thanks to the injuries. And so I know it's one start and that he has to continue to build off of this, and we're not going to come to any sort of conclusions too quickly here early in this season because it is just game 3 that we're talking about of 162. But as I mentioned in my video, just about a week ago, Griffin Canning could potentially be a very, big dark horse candidate for this New York Mets team's success in 2025. And that's what I wanted to say. So again, if you don't know final line, 5 1/3 innings pitched, 87 pitches for Griffin Canning, 2 earned runs, 2 walks, and 4 strikeouts. But we have to talk about a little bit of the elephant in the room here with Carlos Mendoza deciding to leave Griffin Canning in the ball game to face Yordan Alvarez the 3rd time. Now, Mets fans, this is my live chat poll. If you're a part of my YouTube channel, if you're subscribed, please vote in this live chat poll. And if you're not, if you're watching on X, because this is also streaming to my X account, come on over to YouTube and subscribe as always. But most importantly, to also give your opinion about this poll, because you can kind of assess this decision by Carlos Mendoza 2 different ways. I didn't like it. I'm going to be very blunt and very honest with you. I always back Carlos Mendoza. I think it's pretty hard not to back most Carlos Mendoza decisions, especially with how much, it proved to be correct last season and where the Mets just ended up in general. But I think that if the Mets are going to stick to this approach of playing the matchups on a very large basis, with putting these relievers in, going lefty on lefty potentially, with constructing the lineup a certain way, putting lefties in the ball game versus righties, if they want to commit to this lefty versus righty situation, a situation that I don't really necessarily buy into, but they have shown themselves to be committed to, you got to commit to it. And this was a situation where it was a tie ball game. Griffin Canning I forgot how many pitches he was actually at that point, but the guy who basically owns Griffin Canning in his entire career up until that point is coming up to the plate. Coming into tonight, I believe Yordan Alvarez was 7 for 13 versus Griffin Canning in his career. That's concerning. And so the fact that he went 0 for 2 leading up to that 3rd at bat was awesome to see in terms of the production output of Griffin Canning. But I simply don't think that if you're Carlos Mendoza in that situation, you see the situation, you're able to get a reliever warm. And I'm not saying it was Jose Butto because at that point, I believe only Jose Butto was up in the bullpen getting warm. That's the perfect situation for Danny Young. This is what the broadcast was saying in game 1, right? When Danny Young appeared in relief. That basically his biggest assignment this entire series, whether it was game 1, 2, or 3, was going to be Yordan Alvarez. That was his primary assignment. And that's where you have Danny Young for that particular instance. Because at that point, it was too early to utilize AJ Minter, especially after he just pitched the day before. So it was going to be Danny Young coming off of a day's rest in game 2. I don't think you can let Griffin Canning pitch to Yordan Alvarez there, knowing the history, knowing the situations, getting a little bit deeper into the ball game. I think everybody was pleasantly surprised at that point, getting 5 1/3 innings pitched out of Griffin Canning with only 1 run given up. That's a win. That's a win. So I think that definitely should have been Danny Young in that ball game. But again, he didn't have Danny Young warming up, to my knowledge, the half inning before. So maybe that was never an option for one reason or another. We don't know what goes on behind closed doors in the clubhouse, who's available versus who's not. I'm sure the media, as we are streaming this right now, is asking Carlos Mendoza what the thought process was. And on the other side of things, to sort of defend the decision a little bit, because I like to look at it from both lenses, is that it's early in the season. Griffin Canning, up until that point, was on a roll. You don't have a speedy guy, really, in Paredes at first base at that time. What are the chances Yordan Alvarez perfectly places one to the deepest part of the ballpark? And honestly, if Jose Siri plays that baseball perfectly off the wall, that run doesn't score. And I know it's still probably second and third with one out, but maybe Carlos Mendoza wanted to instill some confidence in Griffin Canning and kind of reward him for a job well done leading up until that point. But if we're talking about the regular season and every game matters, especially stacking wins early in the season before a very tough June stretch, while your team's not fully healthy, I would have to think that you have to make all the decisions necessary, even in the opening series, even though it's game 3, to keep that game tied. So I did not like that decision by Carlos Mendoza, but I understand it. I understand it, but I don't like it, is what I'll basically assess that as. So let me know. What do you all think? Let me read some of the chat here. I know that a lot of people have a lot of differences in opinion about this, and we'll talk about the lifeless hitting here. I know that that's the other elephant in the room. Absolutely 100%. Some people talking about now you and people in this chat want Danny Young in that spot. Listen, M-Easy, this is what I'm going to say to you. Look at the splits on Danny Young last season. They said it on the broadcast in game 1. If you weren't listening to it, okay, fine. I'll tell you what they said. Look at the splits, because I've also done my due diligence in terms of looking at the numbers of Danny Young last season. No, he wasn't great, but a lot of damage off of Danny Young last season came against right-handed bats. The one lefty you should be scared of in that lineup is Yordan Alvarez, unless I'm missing somebody else, right? That is the guy that Danny Young has to come into the ball game to face. So no, I don't like Danny Young in general, but if you're going to play the matchups and you're going to look at his lefty on lefty success, you got to bring him into the game. So listen, I hear you loud and clear. We weren't talking highly of Danny Young. Nobody really is, because again, this is a league that has imposed a 3-batter minimum. You don't have lefty specialists anymore, which is essentially what Danny Young is if you look at the splits. But I would have taken my chances with him getting potentially Yordan Alvarez out and then having to deal with Christian Walker coming up on deck. I would have taken my chances with that probably than letting Griffin Canning face Yordan Alvarez. That's just my opinion. And again, this is why I wanted to make the live chat poll. And let me actually go in here and see what you all are saying, because I'm very curious. Very curious. Can I see the splits? Okay, 37 votes so far. I'm literally looking at it right now. 59% of you all say that it was questionable. 42% at this point say you were fine with it. So keep voting in that live chat poll, because again, I understand maybe where the thought process was. It's early in the season. If Canning gets Yordan Alvarez out, that inning is looking pretty good. I would have full confidence in him to get Christian Walker out and go 6 innings pitched with only 1 earned run. But again, that's not what happened. So we have to talk about it, unfortunately. Hindsight's always 20/20. I will say that. And I understand that. But these are the little decisions as Mets fans we need to assess, because this is why the managerial job is hard as it is. But you know what? Mendoza's going to bounce back. I bet you he doesn't let it happen twice in a row. I bet you if this same situation arises again, I bet you he goes with Danny Young. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye out for that. Stan is saying, I 1,000% agree with you that Siri, of all people, as a great center fielder, misplayed that ball. Taylor may have made that play, and Lindor's relay stunk. Also, Altuve's speed is average. I think it was Paredes on first base at that point, not Altuve, but I understand your point in general. Yeah, listen, it's tough for me to sort of, I think Jose's series is a little bit, or I should say, let me rephrase this. I think the relay from Lindor is a lot more excusable than the actual receiving of the ball off the wall that Jose Siri had, right? Because that play starts with Jose Siri. And by the time Lindor gets that ball, I mean, that's a last-ditch effort. That's a Hail Mary, play to throw the runner out at home plate. It's just simply not going to happen. But I do think a well-played ball off the wall keeps that run from scoring. But again, you're still talking about a tough situation for Canning, for whoever else comes in the ball game. Jose Buto, Danny Young, doesn't matter. At that point, it would be second and third with only one out. But yeah, that ball was definitely misplayed by Jose Siri. It's hard to get on Jose Siri this game, man. He manufactured by himself the Mets' one and only run. That's it. I mean, Juan Soto as well. This series really was Juan Soto, I guess you can say, versus the Houston Astros. You take a look at that last at bat in the first game aside. Let me rephrase that again. It was the Mets pitching plus Juan Soto versus the Houston Astros. Need more offense. Need more offense. Not scoring, since the third inning of game 2, right? All the way until the 6th inning of game 3. It's tough to defend that. It's very tough to defend that. So I completely agree. I like reading your guys' comments, to be honest with you. Sometimes I just sit here quietly and I read your comments because I'm really curious in terms of what you all have to say. Yeah, listen, this is why I wanted Acuna on this roster. I didn't care if he was getting regular at-bats. I didn't care if he was getting regular starts. You know what I mean? Like, the reason why Acuna came into the game today as a pinch runner and stealing a base immediately to set up a would-be successful inning, if the Mets actually knew how to hit situationally, is why you have him on the roster, regardless of what his role is, because he can do that for you. He is fast, man. It's no wonder he's stealing 40-plus bags consistently in the minor leagues. So, yeah. Hope saying, got to move on, CP. Win or lose, got to have a short memory in this long-ass season, bro. Absolutely, 100%. 100%. I'm going into the X's and O's here because this is what we do on the post game. We assess every game, what went right, what went wrong. But I agree, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, 1-2, going to Miami in this next matchup starting on Monday. We get the off day tomorrow, regroup, take care of business in Miami. That's really should be the mentality of this team right now. So in the grand scheme of things, yes. But in this post game, we got to talk about it. Bullpen looks amazing. Solid is underselling them, Aaron. I know it's one series, but they look amazing. I'm very thrilled with this bullpen, and by the roster construction of it, the names that are just solely written on paper, they're going to have a very big task at hand. And I think that they're up to the task because I like this bullpen and the names that we got. Let's see here. Got a lot of Beatty comments in this chat, man. I could go in on Brett Beatty, but I'm gonna refrain from it, to be honest with you. We'll see how things keep on going. But I'm not really liking what I'm seeing from Brett Beatty offensively. Listen, he can play second base. The defense, I'm not worried about who's playing second base defensively. Acuna, even with the throwing errors, is definitely the better defender. But if you throw Brett Beatty out there, fine. Who's going to give me the most productive at-bats is the question between Acuna and Brett Beatty. That's the question. That's how these lineups should be constructed. Maybe more so than just the matchups of it all, lefty versus righty. Because the Mets are coming in on a stretch here of multiple right-handers in a row. So are you going to continuously throw Brett Baty out there if he can't even move a runner over to third base with a man on second and nobody out, which is what the situation was? And I get it. Jose Siri came up and struck out the very next at bat. But again, hindsight's always 2020. The Mets have to just situationally hit, and the game will be so much easier. And it wasn't only Brett Baty. I forgot the other situation in this game where the Mets were in striking distance and it was just an unproductive at bat. I forgot what happened. It was the Baty strikeout with Acuna on second base. Somebody remind me of the other situation. I'm kind of blanking here. But there was another opportunity to move a runner over at the very minimum, and the Mets couldn't cash in. You want an example of situational hitting? Let's take a look at the Juan Soto or the Jose Siri run in the sixth inning, right? Jose Siri is standing on second base, nobody out. Francisco Lindor's coming up to the plate. He knows Juan Soto's behind him. He's going to take his chances with Juan Soto. He knows that all he has to do is move the runner over to third base with less than 2 outs. And he doesn't. He doesn't do it by pulling a ground ball. He does it with a sacrifice fly. And Siri moves from second to third. That's like the small ball when an offense is struggling to manufacture runs and the pitching is holding things down. Those are the types of at-bats that I can appreciate as a Mets fan. We know this offense has been lethargic this entire series, essentially, outside of the first 3 innings of Game 2. Those are the types of at-bats that we need. Francisco Lindor got the job done, and the run scored. Now, I get it. It was kind of in an unusual way, but the process usually leads to the results. I'm just not seeing that process so far with the New York Mets. And you can take a look at the lineup here in terms of the box score. A lot of offers. A lot. Lindor's also a culprit. With the slow starts, historically, he's going to turn it around. But when? The question is when. He takes the 0 for 11 in the series, 0 for 4 today. Juan Soto, 1 for 3. Double in the first inning. Can't get him over. Can't score him. He does get the RBI. It was kind of a cheap RBI because that was Jose Siri all by himself, but he gets the RBI nonetheless. Alonso, he's been putting together decent at-bats in the first 2 games in terms of not swinging at the down-and-out breaking pitches, but he takes the 0 for. He looked pretty bad today. Brandon Nimmo hasn't gotten anything going, really. Mark Vientos, I mean, that ball that was smoked by Mark Vientos in the 9th inning, if that is a foot to the left or the right, you're talking about a tie ball game and a clutch hit by Mark Vientos, but it was right at Jeremy Pena, unfortunately. I mean, just a ton of offers. Brett Baty, 0 for 3, 2 strikeouts. I don't. Something's going to click with this offense, but it hasn't just yet. The at-bats look a little bit lazy to me. That's my honest assessment through the first 3 games. And a lot of people are going to tell me, yeah, don't worry. This offense is going to come around. It's only 3 games. Don't panic. I'm not panicking. I know this offense is going to come around. I was a big believer in the offense last season, even during their slump in a crucial time. What was it? Early August, late July, they couldn't manufacture a run at all. I was like, this team is top 10 in every offensive category. They're going to come through, and they did as the season progressed. The offense essentially won them the ball game to clinch that playoff spot in Atlanta. This offense is going to come around. That's not a question. I know that for a fact. But when we're on these post games, we have to call a spade a spade. These at-bats looked lazy. Pretty much everybody outside of Juan Soto. They did. And the results showed it. So, yeah, listen, at the end of the day, the pitching did their job all series long. You know, with the off day tomorrow, I'm not sure if we're going to do a series recap. You know, if Rob's going to be available for that. But I would like to, because there's a lot of things that we can assess, small things. A ball bounces a different way, a different decision was made. And we're sitting talking about a series win, feeling good, instead of talking about a 1-2 start to the season. That's what's like the biggest killer of this series, is that it was so winnable. And everybody was worried about this rotation. Oh, the rotation this, the rotation that. They held their own. They held their own. We got to tip our caps to Tyler McGill and Griffin Canning, who nobody wanted to see out there. Nobody did. Rob going to Houston saying, oh, I have to watch Griffin Canning and Tyler McGill pitch. They actually produced the two better starts rather than Clay Holmes in game one. So shout out to the pitching, man. That's the biggest positive that I'll take away from this series, is that the pitching, and I've said this all offseason long, nobody wants to listen. I get it. Maybe I can still get punched in the face with this take, but I think the pitching, the production that we're going to get, whether it's from the bullpen or the rotation or both combined, I think they're going to be better than a lot of people have given them credit for. Yeah, they probably still need an ace, which was very evident in game one when Framber Valdez won 7 scoreless innings. That's what an ace does. The Mets can still use that, of course. The pitching held their own. So offense needs to turn it around. But I was pleasantly surprised with the pitching. You got to also tip your cap to Spencer Arrighetti. I mean, I think he was a rookie last season, if I'm not mistaken, for Houston. Posted a 4.53 ERA. Nothing special. You've already went through Framber Valdez and Hunter Brown. Spencer Arrighetti threw a hell of a game. He was keeping the Mets offense off balance all game long. All game long. So salute to him as well. But yeah, this box score just simply can't happen. When you're talking about as good of an offense on paper that you can possibly even dream of as a Mets fan, regardless of who's in the bottom of the order, that top 5 alone should be producing more than 1 or 2 runs a ball game. And they haven't just yet. And to answer your question, Explosive, about, let's see, maybe we overestimated this offense like we underestimated the pitching. CP, is the offense worse than we think? No, this offense isn't worse than we think. It's 3 games. This is where I'll say and use that excuse that it's only 3 games. I have immense confidence in this offense. So let's not get it twisted. I hope my words aren't getting skewed. I have a lot of confidence in this offense. They're going to produce runs. That's not my worry. But my worry is, first of all, what do the Mets do at second base? How do they handle the second base situation? Because the way that this is rolling right now, Brett Beatty is not going to win this job over McNeil when McNeil comes back. And Acuna, he's not going to be probably given the opportunities to win it, given the right-handed dominance of opposing pitching that the Mets are going to see. So I would assume that Brett Beatty gets the bulk of the starting job before McNeil gets back, which is why I think McNeil is going to be the starting second baseman immediately when he gets back. And I even thought that if one of these guys and Acuna and Beatty were doing well, I still thought that McNeil was going to be the starting second baseman when he got back. Well, what are the Mets going to do at second base? It's the big question. And the other question that I really have is, can this situational hitting just be different? Because even in 2024, as good as the Mets offense was, there was still so many opportunities, so many missed opportunities. Whether it was lack of situational hitting, moving the runner over. And I get it. A lot of people in today's day and age of baseball don't like small ball. They don't care for small ball. Double, home run, strikeout. Those are the 3 options. I get it. The doubles and home runs are important. But again, if you're talking about an offense that is struggling to manufacture runs, like I just said about, 10 minutes ago, the small ball actually matters early on in the season when the Mets hitters are still trying to get their timings correct. They're still trying to gain the timing of the opposing pitcher. Small ball will matter. This is the major leagues at the end of the day. Everybody at this level got here for a reason because at one point in their career, right, they were able to put a bunt down. They were able to move a runner over. And guess what? If you've never played baseball before, maybe you don't quite understand it. And I understand that. We think of doubles, home runs, whatever, as the end all be all. I bet you watch any team at any level, there's a guy standing on second base with 0 outs, and the guy at the plate makes a productive out to get that runner over to third base. Everybody is standing in front of the dugout at the steps, high-fiving the guy who just got out and moved the runner over. I guarantee you. I guarantee you. So it's important. I don't want that to go over anybody's heads. Small ball is important. At times. It's not the end all be all, but it's important. So listen, that's my assessment of this series. Offense will come around. Situational hitting needs to come around. Spring training has some indicators of success, of course, but it's not the end all be all. But at the end of the day, you have to be happy, not with the end result of the series, but especially with how the bullpen looked and mainly how Tyler McGill and Griffin Canning looked, and Juan Soto. But anybody who was questioning Juan Soto coming into the series just simply doesn't know who Juan Soto is. So, new series starting on Monday. I'm not sure what the start time is. Is it a 6:40 start time? I know sometimes the start times in Miami are a little bit weird. But the Mets are traveling to Florida, Miami, Florida. They'll be taking on the Marlins in a very fresh series. It's going to be David Peterson making his regular season debut. The Mets adjusting their rotation for the opening series. David Peterson gets the ball in game 1 versus right-handed pitcher Cal Quantrill. Marlins are the Marlins. They're going to be a very bad team, but they'll find ways to beat the Mets, historically speaking. So let's not have that happen. Let's take care of business. And again, early in this season, especially when we're talking about late March, early April, beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. Beat the teams that you were supposed to beat. The Astros are a good team. They're going to be in the playoffs. You can even label them probably a World Series contender coming out of the American League if their rotation holds up, because their lineup is good. So that's a team that the Mets can beat. We're expecting them to beat the Astros, but it didn't happen. Okay, that was a good team. You got to beat the Marlins. And David Peterson needs to set the tone with a nice start, and I want to see the bats come out hot, out of the gates, swinging, and producing runs. No excuses in Miami. And I'm sure, again, if Rob is available tomorrow, whether it's a late night stream or whenever it is, we'll do a series recap and a series preview with the upcoming series. But that's going to be it for this post game. I appreciate everybody that was able to tune in. Let me just go ahead and check out the comments section one more time just to see if I missed anything. Again, I like reading your guys' comments. Dolo saying fire the hitting coaches, Chavez and Barnes. Carlos is saying 1 and 2 is better than 0 and 3. I'm not buying into any of this Mets offense is overrated talk just yet. 6:40. Thank you for Stan and Dwayne for the 6:40 start time. That's what I figured, because I always feel like Miami is 6:40 instead of the 7:10s. So I'm glad I actually got that right. So, all right, guys, that's going to be it for me. I appreciate everybody that was in this chat. Thank you for dropping those comments. Thank you for smashing those thumbs up buttons. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed already, it's not too late to do so. Trying to push this channel over to 2.4K subscribers, so I definitely appreciate that. But listen, a lot of baseball left to be had. I'm glad we're back here in the regular season talking Mets baseball. I'm so glad. So glad. Because regardless if it's win or lose, baseball season is the best. A lot of baseball left to be played, though. Ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake about that. Let's not overreact. That's not time for panicking. but it's time to honestly assess what went wrong versus what went right and what we expect to get better. So appreciate you all. Everybody have a fantastic rest of your weekend. Off day tomorrow. I wish we could be back at it tomorrow, but keep an eye out on a potential stream. Hit the notifications, hit the subscribe. Appreciate everybody. Thank you for the support. And Rob will be back on the next post game. I am sure of it. So let's go, Mets, everyone. Series 1 is in the books. It's a series loss. A lot to learn from. Mets are going to be okay. I'll catch you all later. Let's go, Mets. Peace.